Hello and welcome to Your County. I'm your host, Lynne Turner Fitzgerald. Joining me today, Sam Bofto, who is Director of Youth Services for Yellowstone County, and Sean Dunn, who is a program therapist with Youth Services. It's a little hard to say, but thank you both for being here. I know very little about your program. So Sam, I'm going to start with you. You're fairly new in your position as director.
Yes, I am. I began in May of this year.
Okay. But a long history with the Yellowstone County Sheriff's Department.
Yes, I did 28 years with the Sheriff's Office.
Okay. Well, how's it going so far?
Great. It's been a really good learning experience for me, managing especially the shelter care, which I did not have any experience dealing with the youth with that, but I do have some experience managing detention. I did manage the Yellowstone County Detention Facility for quite a number of years.
Okay. Yeah. So Youth Services is comprised of two separate programs under the same roof. Is that right?
Yes.
Can you explain that?
So on one side we have the shelter care where we take referrals from Department of Family Services and Juvenile Court Services of those kids that really need a place to be, a safe place to be. Often, kind of like a group home sort of setting. We continue their education with their schools they're assigned to, or if they're not assigned to a school, we provide education for them and on a daily basis, and we do a lot of group activities and so on and so forth with them. Sean here provides counseling services to most of them, but it's kind of a holding pattern for them for we could find a decent placement for them within various services that we have.
Okay. So, Sean, what would lead to a child entering into the shelter care, for instance?
We take referrals over the phone from Department of Family Services, Youth Court Services, all over the region. Sometimes Department of Corrections, but those cases are rare. And during that screening process, they got to be appropriate. They can't be demonstrating violence towards other kids their age. Things like that. We're going to obviously be looking for any sexual offending type behavior that's possibly untreated. Fire settings, deal breaker. So, yeah, we screen those kids best we can. Not to say we don't have problems once they show up, but that's part of what they need is that structure and accountability that we provide.
And what ages are we talking about?
Shelter care is 12 to 18.
12 to 18, okay. So are these children coming into your shelter care because of a disruption in their family?
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
Pretty much 100%?
If not their own family, possibly a foster care placement that broke down due to behaviors or some other circumstances. I have some kids sent to work with me specifically from court services, which we can talk about that later whenever you're ready. But they come from all kinds of circumstances. We had a past supervisor who referred to it as a port in a storm. And that's pretty telling. I mean, all these kids got a storm of some kind going on in their life. So we provide them a safe, structured place to be, care for them.
Well, typically, how long are they there?
It's across the board.
There's no typical.
It could be less than 24 hours. We've had kids up to a year.
Oh,
Just
wow.
depends on what's going on in their individual cases. Yeah.
And it's not just Yellowstone County kids,
Correct.
Is that right?
Correct.
Where else do you accept?
We serve the region.
Oh.
Basically from the North Dakota border all the way to Sweetgrass County.
Okay.
Yeah. But we do serve some out of region people as well, both in detention and shelter care, because we're only one of 3 detention facilities in the state.
For youth?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Correct.
Now you were mentioning court services. Explain that.
Juvenile probation. Juvenile probation, if these kids earn charges that then land them in youth court, and that's going to be handled by youth court officers, which is the probation officers. So there's different levels of supervision that they have to abide by. But oftentimes, it started with just Yellowstone County, and we've formed relationships throughout the entire region. So we get referrals from probation officers in this whole region, just over the relationships we formed over the years, and good working relationships with those respective jurisdictions.
Okay, so I'm a little confused. So they're on probation for something that they did, but they're not in the secured detention?
Not always. Not
Okay,
always.
that's confusing. Tell me the difference.
Well, as everyone knows, we've had quite a rash of serious crimes with the juveniles in our county, in our city, and the surrounding area. And those cases take a long time to dispose of, to reach adjudication. So there was a long period of time we had to turn cases away. You know, they had detainable charges, but we didn't simply have the space. So those more significant crimes are gradually leaving and going on to Pine Hills, or some will go to MSP. So, you know, and since Sam's come on board, I like his approach of, if we can take them, we take them. You know, that's an uncomfortable feeling if you're on call in the middle of the night and you got an officer that's like, what do you mean you can't take this kid?
Yeah.
You know, it's a terrible feeling, but there again, we have to meet licensing standards too on our staffing ratios and things like that.
Right.
We're just about staffed up to where we need to be. But yeah, there was just a lot of struggles going on there at that time.
Well, what is capacity, Sam?
It's 24. We are licensed to go over by 2, but I don't have actual cells for them. We put them on a portable bunk in a visiting room, secure visiting room. But the whole problem is I got to have some light at the end of the tunnel set. Some people are moving, so I can put them in a cell, you know, appropriately. And if I could walk you through a typical referral,
Please, yeah.
for a youth that has been arrested. Typically, I'll get a call in the middle of the night from one of my staff members that said, you know, I have for instance, the Yellowstone County Sheriff's Office has a youth in custody for a violent offense, assault with a weapon, that sort of thing. In order to incarcerate a youth, it has to be the same as an adult. The charges, the severity of charges. So if it is a charge where an adult would be typically placed into custody at the Yellowstone County Detention Facility, we can do the same at the youth detention. So they will call me and say what they got. I make sure that they're not, you know, intoxicated to the point where they're going to be a health risk. We make them go to the ER to get cleared beforehand, and make sure they don't suffer from any mental disabilities. That is a licensure issue that I have. I can't take anybody that has autism or, you know, severe mental health issue. Typically, if that person meets the standards, we will bring them in. Now, in the juvenile system, they have to have a detention hearing within 24 hours of being incarcerated, excluding the weekends. Happens on a Friday night. The detention hearing will be Monday in district court, where a district court judge will make that determination if the youth will stay incarcerated.
So there is not a specific youth court. Do I understand that?
Well, youth court, the youth court is made up of probation officers, the youth court services, I should say, made up probation officers. But if the severity reached the standards of a higher level, the district court takes over. So each district court judge has their own youth court.
Okay. Well, so let's say you get that phone call and this youth needs to be placed and there's no room.
We tell them there's no room.
Where do they go?
With a parent, with a guardian. It leaves it up to the officer on the street to find appropriate placement. The problem is a lot of times we'll have a partner family member assault where the parent is the victim of this. This is where it gets really tough, where we try to take them the best we can, you know, to diffuse the situation. I've been there. You know, I was a cop on the street when I had these situations and there was no place to place the individual. And so it's very frustrating.
What did you do?
You do the best you can to find a relative of some sort that they can place the kid with. that is it's appropriate placement, where I know the kid's going to be safe, where they've got an adult watching over them.
Mm-hmm. And you sort of have a sense of how long that would take before a bed opens up or a cell?
Well, that's the hard part. We've got kids that are in youth detention that have been in there for over a year.
Oh, wow.
These cases are taking longer and longer. And again, we are a regional facility where I've got youth in there for anywhere from the Bozeman area all the way to the North Dakota line.
Sounds like Montana may be underserved.
Well, right now I'm sitting at 21, so I have 3 empty beds right now, which is doesn't happen very often.
To have that available.
To have
Correct.
those availability.
Okay.
And so we try to keep at least 1 empty cell if we can before the weekend, so in case something pops up over the weekend, we have a place to put the youth.
Okay. Well, Sean, who determines when a child can leave the shelter? Is that
Up to the referring worker.
okay?
Yeah, yeah. And, oftentimes
And where they go?
Well, there again, that's up to the referring worker.
Right.
Or guardian. But there again, outside of my caseload, oftentimes I'll try to do my best to help case manage some of those. I mean, all of our caseworkers, whether it's mental health caseworkers or court services or Department of Family Services, they're all busy. They all got huge caseloads.
I'm sure.
So anything I can do internally, whether it's writing a supporting document or coordinating services for that kid to help them get on down the road, more than happy to do that.
I'm going to ask you, in your years of this work, have you seen changes in behavior in youth?
I get asked that a lot by folks outside of this area of work. And I would have to say, without a doubt, the severity of crimes we're seeing for our kids in detention over the last decade has exponentially gotten worse. Exponentially gotten worse.
Is there a reason?
I mean, there's a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it's generational. All these kids come from traumatic backgrounds. Obviously, we have gang influences.
Right.
As much as a lot of people don't want to admit that, the folks on the force, BPD, they'll tell you otherwise.
Oh,
they've got
I've
the
had
receipts.
Chief St. John sitting right where you are telling me about the gangs
Absolutely.
here.
And that is a huge influence.
Sure.
You know?
Well, they belong. It's someplace to belong,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
I have so many questions. We are just about out of time for your section. What we're going to do is we're going to have Kale Joyce come on next. He's also with Youth Services with Yellowstone County. He serves as an addiction specialist. But let's do this again soon.
Sure.
I have so many more questions for you. So we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. And we're back. Sam Bofto is with us. He is the Director of Youth Services for Yellowstone County. Kale Joyce is joining us now, and he is the Addiction Specialist for Youth Services. Thanks for being here. Sam, though, I want to start with you and ask about the funding. What are your sources?
We are funded through Yellowstone County and some various other counties within our
Right.
region. We do get some cold board money for those in the region, and it helps keep our doors open and keeps us staffed.
Is there any like grant writing or any of that sort of outside money
We do get a grant from the Board of Crime Control to help us out with all that, it being a regional facility.
Well, it's great that they understand the need.
Absolutely.
For
We're one of 3 facilities. There's one in Missoula, one in Great Falls, and one in Billings that serves the whole state.
But you don't take, say, North Dakota youth into your... or do you?
If it came up where they needed to place a youth in there, yes, and we do have
You
a
would.
daily rate
Okay.
for them.
Oh.
And if we had the room, we'll help somebody out. Absolutely.
So they're aware that
Yes.
you exist.
Yes, and we take federal youth in there. We do have a long-standing contract with the U.S. Marshal Service
Right.
for youth that commit crimes on the reservation.
Now, do you anticipate expanding your facility?
We recently did, with the work that the commissioners are doing with the jail expansion, we recently had the same group come in and take a look at our facility.
Good.
And as part of that, my understanding is that'll be completed sometime around December. And we all know that we could use a bigger facility, a new design of the facility. Our current design of the detention area is a linear design, which is it's been outdated for years and years and years. And we've seen new concepts of new facilities that they have. One in particular in South Dakota, where it's you jail it down a little bit and make it more of, it's still secure, but it's a little bit more youth friendly.
Okay, a little more homey, maybe.
And the problem is it is extremely expensive. You know, we got some preliminary figures of upwards of $60 million, and that is just not feasible for us right now.
What is your location? You're in the city
410
limits, right?
South 26th, just south of the Probation and Parole Office.
Okay. What was the building originally? Was it built for youth services?
Yes. Yes.
That was the intention?
Yeah, built in 1987, expanded to add more secure beds in 97, similar to what the Yellowstone County Detention Facility had.
Right.
And it was a new concept of the jail and shelter care concept that Ted Lechner came up with. In fact, Ted is named after, his name is on the facility. He has been an inspiration for many years for a lot of people. I knew him as a kid, so we hope to carry on his legacy.
Yeah, okay. Well, Kale, thank you again for being here. Now, you're the addiction specialist, so we've established that you've got the secure detention part and then the shelter care. Do you cross over and work in both programs?
Yes, limitedly on the secure detention. I might do an assessment or meet with a kid when they come in if they're having some trouble with withdrawals or anything like that. But regularly, I will do a daily group Monday through Friday, 1 hour of group session with those kids on the detention side.
Okay, all right. And how long have you been an addiction specialist?
Well, I started at Rimrock Foundation and got my license in 2003, and I've been in the community ever since.
And primarily working with youth?
Yes,
okay.
Primarily. About 15 years at Rimrock, and then now 2.5 here.
What are the top addictions that you witness?
Well, it's changed with the introduction of fentanyl. It's really flipped on everyone to fentanyl. We saw the opioid epidemic kind of give rise to the fentanyl epidemic. So
where are they getting it?
It's just straight off the street. I mean, we are seeing it in higher numbers for very cheap, right on the street.
And some of it's fake, right? I mean, isn't there a danger? There's a danger, obviously, in taking fentanyl, but isn't there also a fake fentanyl on the street that is?
There's always going to be fake types of drugs or drugs that are passed off as something and they're something totally different. The fentanyl that's coming over is coming over in very large quantities and it's very cheap. So usually what we're seeing is high quality fentanyl. And what we're seeing is kids now going after fentanyl and wanting it for their high. And not just kids, adults as well, but they weren't looking for fentanyl for a high prior to maybe 2 or 3 years ago. Now we're seeing that the fentanyl high doesn't scare them anymore, and we are now catching people with that specific drug for their drug of choice.
Do you treat that addiction differently than you would say treat another addiction like opioids or alcohol?
Well, I think we would just treat each individual differently
Okay.
for what they're going after it for. There's a lot of different reasons people fall into this or get into this by choice. If they are growing up in a family that has been using heavily, if they're getting into it because of friends or because of some specific thing that has happened to them, it would have to be an individualized kind of approach with each kid.
Sure, sure. So, and then you do that work too. You work
Yes.
one-on-one with the kids.
Yes.
And what is a typical day for you?
Taking referrals, I would do maybe a group at one, but I would, prior to that, be open for an assessment. I have this afternoon, I'll have to do some testing for an assessment and then finish an assessment. I'm wide open for my mornings to do those, and I get those referrals from maybe somebody in probation or a case manager or somebody in CPS might ask me to do those for any given kid in our population. And then in the afternoons, I'm booked. I will be 1 to 2 in the detention side, and then I give myself about a half an hour, and then I will start individuals with kids that are coming to the IOP or the outpatient program, and do those for about an hour, and then from 3:30 to 5, I'll have an outpatient Monday and Thursday.
Now, who attends that? Who's referred to that?
Any kid can get referred to it. If a kid shows up for those Monday and Thursday groups, I wouldn't turn them away if they had an addiction or had some questions. I would have them join. That's kind of always been the open door policy for the Monday and Thursday groups.
Okay.
And so it's more of a support style group of an outpatient setting where they could come anytime they wanted. They could come once a week, they could come twice a week, they could come 3 times a month.
And are they charged for that?
They would not be charged if they weren't under probation and parole
Okay.
or
Okay.
some other entity.
Right. What percent of the population of these youth are addicted in your facilities?
That would be hard to say. I don't
Does
think
it
we
change?
track those numbers. I'd say of the kids that I see, I'd say maybe half are absolutely going to go on to major problems with addiction. The other half might struggle for their youth or might come in and out of it, but about half of what I see are using daily, having serious infractions with the law because of their use, and not really buying into recovery on any level.
On any level. Okay. So, sorry to sound so naive, but do any kids get sober here?
You know, it takes a village. It takes a lot of different people. There's a lot of moving parts. One of the things with Youth Services Center, if a kid is in shelter care, they can come to my groups. And what I understand, the kids love our staff, and our staff is very personal. A lot of what I do and what they do is get to know the kid and have that personal relationship. And I think that's where we do our best work, is knowing the kid and knowing the family and reaching out to figure out what their next step is so that we can all speak to that and help them support that kid going back into a community or
Yeah.
moving on to another placement.
Well, Sam, is there a typical ratio of staff to youth?
Yeah. Yeah, we're under licensing, like in the shelter care side from DPHHS of 8 to 1, and that 1 staff per 8 individual or youth, and then same on the detention side. So
So that one staff member would have the same 8 youth for an extended period of time?
well, it depends on where they're working.
Okay.
My staff will work both sides with shelter care and on detention, and we'll rotate them just to, make things, because working both sides, it has its pros and cons. If you're working shelter care, you're cooking too. We cook right there on the facility.
Oh, you
and-
mean literally cooking?
Yes,
not
we're cooking.
Cooking with gas, but okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
Well, we are cooking with a gas
Okay.
stove, but they do a great job cooking
Wow.
meals for. And you're looking at well, today you've got 28 kids cooking 3 meals a day. They do a great job, and and when you're talking detention and even shelter care, you got to have good food, and you got to have kid food. And so the staff get very creative on what they serve the kids. And we offer incentives on both sides. You complete this, we have you'll get this. And we have an ongoing incentive right now. If we have no write-ups for a certain period of time, I'll go pick them up pizza. That even on the detention side. So kids will be kids.
Yeah, sure.
And so we're working real hard on helping them behave, for one, and offer them incentives for the behavior. We do have some really cool incentives coming. The commissioners were gracious enough to sign off to allow us to get tablets
Nice.
in the detention side, offering educational programs anywhere from how to do various computer stuff, just things that they can learn with. And
Yeah.
completing those will give them the opportunity to have entertainment, whether it's a movie.
That's a big
games.
incentive, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We'll be starting that here in a couple of months. and
Awesome.
Really looking forward to it. We've used that in the jail setting at YCDF, which with communications and that sort of thing. And so we're looking to adapt that into our juvenile detention.
Awesome. Well, we have used up all of our time, but I want to thank both of you for being here. I learned a lot.
Thanks for having
about
us.
Youth services
you
in
for having us.
Yellowstone County. And thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time on Your County.